is now 6 p.m. The chair will call this December the 17th regular call board meeting to order. Madam Clerk, has the public been duly notified? They have. And I do confirm a quorum. The chair would ask for a motion to go into executive session for personnel matters.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion we enter executive session for personnel matters.
Second such motion.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Dr. Harris to go into executive session for personnel. All in favor, show by the raising of the right hand. That would be 6. We won't be long. I can't tell you how long, but we won't be long. So thank you, and we're going to go into executive session. time, the chair will ask for a motion to come out of executive session. No action taken.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we exit executive session, no actions taken.
I second.
Chair, second.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Mr. Davis. To come out of executive session, no action taken. All in favor, show by the raising of the right hand. That would be 6-0. This time, I just wanted to welcome everyone to our December 17th regular call board meeting. We do thank you for your supporting our children in this district. And as I always say, it takes a poor frog not to praise his own pond. And so we do thank you, all your parents, from your, whether it's your deacon in your church, elder, community members. We do thank you for supporting the school system. At this time, we're going to have the approval of our agenda. What I did? Oh, yeah, I did. Yes, you're absolutely right. I was getting a little. At this time, we'll have our pledge of allegiance and moment of silence. We'll all stand, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Thank you. Right. This time we ask for motion to approve the agenda as is.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison, second by Mr. Davis to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. This time, do we have any public comment, Mr. Davis?
No, sir.
Moving right along. At this time, we'll have Academic Excellence Award, Fairfield Central High School. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Miller, members of the board, Dr. Hemingway. Tonight, we'll be recognizing our academic scholars from Fairfield Central High School, those students who earned a 100 on the EOC, and those students who earned a 3 or better on the AP exams from the 2023-2024 school year. Dr. Tracy Swilley, principal of Fairfield Central High School, will be coming forward to recognize her students. And Dr. Hemingway, if you could.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, Dr. Hemingway. It is indeed my honor to recognize our students and their academic excellence. I am very excited to be here and thankful for our students who have showed up and their families that are being awarded tonight. We do have several events going on, so it's always a conflict for the high school, but I'm thankful for our students that were able to attend, wishing best of luck to our Griffins who are competing tonight in basketball. So at this time, we'll begin with AP. We know our advanced placement courses are students who are taking college courses, our college level curriculum that can score, if they score a 3 or better, they will get the college credit for those courses. And we have several students who scored a 3, 4, or 5. We begin with Krishi Patel, who is currently out of the country, but he scored a 4 on advanced placement in U.S. history.
Awesome.
Zalikia Carabo, who scored a 4 also on U.S. history. And students, if you're here, please come forward. Jamarcus Wright, who scored a 3 on U.S. history, AP. Scoring a 5 on AP Calculus AB, Kinsley Green. Scoring a 4 on Calculus AB was Javon Sims. Oh, Javon. Scoring a 4 on AP Calculus, Kevin Qualls. Scoring a 3 on AP Calculus AB was Parker Douglas. All right, and so those are our AP recipients. I do want to shout out their teachers. In U.S. History, we have Miss Sabrina Williams, and in Calculus, we have Miss Jean Mazdinati. So congratulations to our students and teachers. Continuing now with EOC, so our end of course tests that count 20% of our students' final grade. We administer these tests in U.S. History, English 2, Biology 1, and Algebra 1. And we are excited about their scores from last year, which is definitely a part of us earning the good rating on our school report card. And just looking at those fall numbers, we're going back for it again. All right, so at this time, we will begin with earning a 100 on U.S. History. U.S. History was Raven Trapp. That's a perfect score. Another perfect 100 went to Tamara Trapp. Another 100 went to Javon Samuel. Another 100 went to Micaiah Sampson. We have another 100 on U.S. History, Quincy Pringle. Another 100 went to Jerica Davis. And cheerleaders are at the game too, so a couple of those were cheerleaders. Another 100, Chantella Johnson. And this is on English 2, English 2. We have a 100 on English 2, Quinala Brown. A 100 on English 2, Xavier Barbosa Gomez. 100 on English 2 was Lily Breeden. 100 on Biology 1 was Jay Sean Worthy. 100 on Biology 1, Colin Samick. 100, Biology 1, Kyla Harper. 100 on Biology 1, Xavier Barbosa Gomez. A 100 on AP US History EOC, Jamarcus Wright. We have a 100 from Krishi Patel for US History. We have a 100 for Algebra 1, Logan Lustig. $100 for Algebra 1, Kyla Johnson. $100 for Algebra 1, Jalen Cooper. And last but not least, a 100 U.S. History, Xavier Young. All right, we would like to congratulate those students on perfect scores on the EOC.
You know, I'm looking at all these our students, and they're making those 100s, and I know they got all these activities. But if I made 80, I would be right. Oh, I made 80, you know, and they making them hundreds. We have some outstanding students. I must say. At this time, Mr. Robinson, you want to introduce our audit?
Good evening, Chairman Miller, the board, Dr. Hemingway. This evening we'll have Mr. Andrew Dobson to present the audit report.
Let's give them a minute.
I guess I didn't want to stay and hear the most riveting 15 minutes ever. It's good to see y'all this evening.
Good evening.
And to bring you your audit. In front of you, you have 3 documents tonight. The first one is the big gray book. That's your entire audit. It's your audit and your single audit. Then you have a 3-page letter if you open that front cover. You have a 3-page letter, and then you have a 1-page summary. I'm going to talk through the 3-page letter first, which is our final communication to you as a board about the audit in general and some generalities about the audit. And then we'll talk through the summary so that hopefully we don't have to get real into the details and look at that audit report. But if you have any questions, please stop me as we're going. I'm more than happy to answer those as we go. Looking at that 3-page letter, this is, as I said, our final communication letter. This is kind of a summary letter to you as a board about some of the higher level aspects of a financial statement audit and a single audit. So I just want to point a couple of things out to you. The first one is the significant accounting policies. The district did not adopt any new significant accounting policies this year. Something the district did a couple years ago that many districts this year were required to do, but you did it ahead of time, which was good. Had to do with bulk purchases. So if you're buying assets under $5,000, which is your capitalization threshold, but you're buying a lot of them together. So think 1-to-1, think buying computers. Computer doesn't cost $5,000, fortunately, these days. But if you buy a lot of them at once, GASB looked at it and said, we want you to capitalize those. And so that's something y'all started doing early a couple of years ago. So this year, you're my only district that didn't have to adopt that in regards to what GASB said. If you look at the top of page 2, it talks about your significant accounting estimates. So the district has 4 significant accounting estimates. The first one is the allowance for doubtful accounts with regards to taxes receivable. So what we're looking at here is historical trends. We're looking at the reasonableness of that allowance. So as you can imagine, at the end of a fiscal year for your district, there's a lot of taxes that have been billed but haven't been collected yet. And so what management is doing is looking at that and estimating what they expect to be collected, and we review that as a part of our audit. The second thing is the estimated useful lives and depreciation expense on capital assets. So what we're looking at here is making sure that when you're putting new fixed assets on the books, whether it's a renovation to a school, a new school, a vehicle that was purchased, anything that's going to last longer than a year and cost more than $5,000, we're looking to make sure that that useful life is in line with what historically those assets have been used for in terms of years. So we're making sure buildings are going on for 40 years, not 10. Making sure that vehicles aren't going on for 15 or 20 years. You know, we're going to expect it to last maybe 5, 7, 10 years. So we're looking at that, and the reason we're looking at that, and the reason that that is one of your significant estimates, is when you get into the government-wide financial statements and we start reporting that depreciation expense. The depreciation expense is really the district's way of reflecting its use of that asset over time. So if you put a, vehicle, $50,000 car on the books for 10 years, let's say, every year you're saying you're using $5,000 worth of that value. So we're looking to make sure those asset lives are right, because that's one of the key inputs into that calculation. So when we reviewed fixed assets and all of that, we found that all the useful lives were still appropriate or were properly applied in the current year. The next two are the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability. I think we've all had this conversation before. It's two really big numbers and some deferred inflows and outflows on your statement of net position. The district's not going to have to write a check for that tomorrow. PEBA tells you what your statutorily required contribution rate is. We make sure you're paying that in. But these are based on actuarial valuations. And so one of the other things that I like to tell boards that we're looking at is, when you have employees come into the district or leave your district, we're making sure they're going into and out of the retirement plan and that health plan at the correct time, because that is what is going into the calculation with these actuaries, and what is used, your contributions into and out of, that is what is used to calculate your proportionate share and then those big numbers. And so we're reviewing that for both of those plans. We found that you made all your payments and that all of your employees that we tested in our sample either went into or came out of the plan at the appropriate time based on their hire, termination, retirement date, whatever that may have been. The next section on that letter at the bottom of page 2 talks about corrected and uncorrected misstatements. And before we get into A and B, none of your corrected misstatements that we found that management corrected were material, either individually or in the aggregate. So you had nothing in your audit that was a material correction. So I want to start off by saying that. You can see in the first little part there, it talks about the district had one uncorrected proposed adjustment related to subscription-based IT agreements. We refer to them as SBITAs. And this is when you go and sign and pay up front for some type of software. So think Adobe or Microsoft Office or something like that. You sign a 3-year agreement. It was $71,618. It was not material. We're just required to report that to you. The second part talks about your government-wide financial statements. And the first part of it, the second part talks about those same SBITAs that we were just mentioning, but the first part talks about leased assets and lease liabilities. So if you lease assets, GASB 3 years ago now said that had to go on as a leased asset and a related liability. We've had districts that have had those that have been material that we've been required to report. There's a lot of undulations and things that are involved in doing that. It's a cost-benefit kind of analysis that the district does. You can see the total net effect on the district's net position would have been $1,700, but we're required to report that to you. So you can see those numbers there as well. The top of page 3 just reiterates what I said at the beginning of this section about that none of the misstatements were material individually or in the aggregate. Next is the disagreements with management. If we had a disagreement with management on how to apply accounting policy, principle, auditing standard, anything of that nature, we would be required to report that to you, and I'm happy to report we had no such disagreements. Next is representations requested from management. as you could probably imagine, we ask a lot of questions and get a lot of answers. And so what this is talking about is at the very end of your audit, there is a letter. It's an 8 or 9 page letter, and it's the district and Dr. Hemingway and Mr. Robinson both signed this letter, and it's just reaffirming the answers to a lot of those questions. No, we don't know about any fraud. No, we don't know about any pending litigation. We've told you everything. We've given you access to everybody if you've had questions, those kind of things. If you did ever want to see that, we just ask that you would ask Mr. Robinson, and you can see that letter. The last thing I want to mention is management's consultations with other accountants. So if we came to you with a new accounting standard or pronouncement or how to handle accounting issue and Mr. Robinson felt like he wanted to go get a second opinion, he would be required to tell us that he did so, and then we would report that to you. And to our knowledge, that did not take place. So it's kind of a standard letter. Nothing really stands out other than the things that I've mentioned to you here tonight. Are there any questions about that letter before we move into the numbers and the actual report?
I have one quick question about the lease assets and lease liabilities.
Yeah.
Why is that a recommendation? Just curious.
So any adjustment that's not made that is over what we consider, and this kind of gets into auditing terms, but we have materiality, right? So if it's material and you don't report it, you have a material misstatement, we can't issue the unmodified opinion. If it's trivial, which is another kind of a calculation that we do, we don't even have to mention it. Now, if it falls in that little sandwich in between the two, we're required to report it to you, but it's not a required, like you don't have to book it. And so that's where those leased assets and leased liabilities come in, is that kind of reporting. And I think that had to do with copiers, the new copiers. I think there's a new copier lease that was signed. And as the district doesn't have very many leases, you just signed a new copier lease, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think it's a 5-year maybe agreement. It's all the copiers, so that number's really big. And those numbers will do this until a point where you get close to the end of your contract, and you'll see that fall off because it will fall under that level that we consider trivial and aren't required to report it. But it didn't, I will say this, and I said this a minute ago, it didn't have any effect on your audit. It didn't have effect on our opinion. It's just because of the values we're required to just tell y'all about it as a board. Are there any other questions? Alrighty. Now we're going to go, and mine has a little bit more on it, to the page that's got the yellow on the top of it. And this is an overview and a summary of what is in that yellow book. Let me first, and I don't think I've done this here before, but let me kind of lay out what your audit is, right? Your audit essentially has 3 reports in it. And it can kind of be looked at as 3 separate pieces. So you've got your financial statement audit, which is the vast majority of this book. Then right behind your financial statement audit, you've got a report on internal controls. We do the report on internal controls because we're doing a single audit. So one of the things we're required to do as a part of a single audit is report to you on your internal controls and report to you on your compliance over your major programs, which is the 3rd and final letter in there. And so I'm going to kind of talk through those different pieces, but I wanted to give you an understanding of, before I start talking through them, what we're talking about. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, you'll see the audit summary. Your financial statement opinion was unmodified, which is the highest and best we can give. Next is the report on internal controls, like I was just mentioning. So as a part of your audit, one of the things that we do, and we do this regardless in a risk-based audit, but we're required to put this report in here for you with the single audit. We look at your internal controls. So we're looking at your internal controls over accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash receipts and disbursements. We actually look at the internal controls over the audit, how the financials are done, how the financial reporting is done to you monthly, things like that. We don't issue an opinion on your internal controls, but if we found something, we would report that to you. And if you think back to last year, I stood up here and told you there was a finding over food service inventory, and I can tell you in the back of this audit, it tells you that's been corrected. So when we looked at food service, we looked at the controls, we looked at the balances, everything was reported correctly, so that finding had been corrected, and you had no findings this year, so that's a good thing. Next is your major program opinion. So your two major programs this year were the Stop Violence program and your child nutrition cluster. That represented about 22.4% of your total federal spending. And you can see the numbers there at the bottom of that little section on how much you spent on each one of those major programs. So the first thing that we do in this report is we do issue an opinion on your compliance. So you had an unmodified opinion, which means you complied in all material respects with the various compliance requirements that we're told by the feds that are direct and material. But just like we do on your financial statement audit, we do on your single audit, we look at your internal controls over that compliance. Again, we don't issue an opinion here, but we would tell you if there was a finding or not. If you remember last year, you had a finding over procurement for the Stop Violence program. That has been corrected this year when we tested both on the control side and on the compliance side. The top right-hand corner talks about your government-wide financial statements. It's the statement of net position and statement of activities. I'm not going to go too much into that because those numbers have that big pension and OPEB liability it takes and puts your capital assets, your long-term debt. If you want to think about it in terms of business terminology, those are going to be like your full accrual financial statements, whereas where the district really resides is more in the fund financials, which is more a cash basis within 60 days of year end. So that's really where I want to spend my time tonight. If you look through the middle there, you'll see your current year activity summary. You've got your major programs listed out, and then I gave you, it says 2022, that's supposed to be 2023. That's your last year's numbers and then this year's numbers. I'm going to talk about the general fund in a minute, so we're going to pass over that and go to your special revenue fund special projects. Your special revenue fund special projects is where the district reports Title I, IDEA, all this lovely ESSER funding that you've been getting and spending. Any of your local, state, or federally restricted dollars that are coming in along with pupil activities. So those funds that you're collecting at the school level and then spending on things like basketball, you know, your athletics, beta club, things of that nature. That's all in this fund. So you can see this year you brought in just a hair over 10 million, spent 9.7 and transferred out 305,000. The next column is your special revenue funds EIA. This column, or these funds do not report a fund balance. So if you have a correlating expenditure, you can recognize the revenue. If not, and you can defer it, you will defer that revenue to the next fiscal year. So you brought in roughly 2.5 million. You spent almost 1.1 million, and you transferred out 1.3, almost 1.4 million. And that transfer out is part of the state's EIA proviso that's aid to districts. That used to be your EIA salary and fringe until they rolled it up a couple of years ago. And that's some state funding that is pushed out to allow assistance with that salary and fringe in the general fund. So that was transferred to the general fund. For food service, your food service beginning fund balance was $41,869. Brought in 2.3 million, spent 2.4, almost 2.5, had a transfer in of 129,000, and an ending fund balance of $24,264. Next is your debt service fund, and this is where you will see all your local and state debt service revenues reported. Total revenues of $3.5 million, spent 1.2, almost 1.3 million on debt payments, and transferred out 2.2 million. That would have gone to your capital projects fund. Capital projects, like I just mentioned, starting fund balance is 4.455, almost 4.5 million. You spent 2.7, almost 2.8 million, and you had a $4.7 million transfer in. That's coming from that debt service I just mentioned, and then a transfer from the general fund as well, giving you an ending fund balance of $6,418,948. Now, if we're looking at the general fund down in the bottom left-hand corner, total revenues for the year were $44,747,673 compared to $42,924,904 in the prior year. You had a budget of $43.3 million, so you're $1.4 million over budget. So you collected more than you had anticipated. Total expenditures this year were 41.7, almost $41.8 million. Last year, 41.4, about a $349,000 increase, but that was $3.9 million less than you had budgeted. You had premiums on bonds sold. That was on your TAN. Transfers in of 1.7 million. That is predominantly that EIA transfer. And then transfers out of 2.6 million. That is predominantly the transfer out to capital projects. So what that did to your fund balance, net fund balance went up $2 million, $2,088,919 to, it went to $18,167,689. That's 43.5% of your current year expenses, 39.7% of your current year budgeted expenditures, and your FY25 budget of $46.9 million, that's 38.7% of next year's budget. And that was about a 4.6% increase year over year. Just to kind of give you some of the categories that on the revenue side that came in over or under budget. Your ad valorem taxes was about $176,000 more than you had budgeted, which is good. Interest, I think we've all seen what interest rates have done lately. Your interest was $568,000 more than you had budgeted. Manufacturer's depreciation, which we've seen this across the state this year, was $480,000 more than you budgeted. And motor carrier was $209,000 more. Your state aid to classrooms offset some of that state increase in the manufacturer's depreciation and motor carrier, as it was $307,000 less than you had budgeted. And if you have been to the presentations at the School Boards Association that they've done about this, that line is the one that is now looking at the 45th and the 135th day student counts and what your district is doing as far as growing students or reducing students as compared to the state as a whole. And so we've seen pretty large fluctuations year over year for districts.
Which line is that? I'm sorry.
It's state aid to classrooms. So if you look in the financials back in the general
Is that
fund.
on this sheet here?
No, I've got analysis on here. If you wanna look at it, if you go to page if you look at page 46, almost smack dab in the middle of the page, under the 3,000 revenue from state sources, it's revenue code 3103. So you'd budgeted $7,117,778, and you got in $6,810,680. And that's been one of those things back when there was a base student cost and all of that, you could kind of predict what your revenue was going to be if your student count went up or went down. We've seen districts who, at the 45th day, had projected one number for revenue. At the 135th, they had more students and their revenue went up. We've seen it where districts had X number of students at the 45th, at the 135th. They didn't grow, but their revenue went up. We've seen it where they grew and their revenue went down because it's all proportional to how every district in the state is growing, and it's all weighted. So if you have a district in the state that exponentially grows and you don't grow as much, there's a chance that number can still decline, which is a whole nother legislative talking point. Let me flip back over here. So from a numbers perspective, and then I'm going to talk about one more thing. It was a good year, right? $2 million into fund balance. You've set aside $1 million for personnel in the future. And over collecting on revenues, which is good. And on the expenditure side, you are monitoring what you're spending. The only other thing I want to mention, and I think some of you, if not all of you, we have talked about this before, is philo. So as you know, there's companies in the district, in the county, that get philo agreements. And what a philo agreement basically does is it comes in and reduces their property taxes. It's a special agreement between the county and whoever that entity is. One of the things you're required to report in your financials is those philo agreements. And so if you looked at page 39, this is in your audit, but I've totaled the numbers. The total reduction in your property taxes due to philo agreements was $1,038,066. Okay? You got none of it. You got no philo revenue from the county. The county has two methods that they can do these agreements under, and most agreements have both. Some have one, some have the other. The first one is truly a philo, fee in lieu of tax. The other one is called an SSRC, or it's a special source revenue credit. So under philo agreements, your taxes are reduced $646,128. And under the special source revenue credits, it was $391,938. So that's how we get back to that $1 million number. We've kind of talked about this for several years. And I think the county, there's been conversations with the county maybe about as those philos expire and are renewed, making sure that you get your share. But I just like to point that out to y'all. Y'all are probably one of my only districts that doesn't get anything. And that's just by virtue of how those agreements were written whenever they were written way back then. But like I said, all in all, a really good year. You were able to use and spend, talking with Mr. Robinson, use up almost all of your ESSER funding. It was all spent out by September 30th. That was a large reason why there's, the increase in fund balance in the general fund that it is, and the healthy transfer to capital projects this year to be able to do some debt-free, capital needs for the district in the future. But fund balance is healthy, and revenues keep going up and expenses are being monitored. So, are there any questions from me about this?
Anybody got any questions? You were talking about, I remember a couple of years ago, we were talking about, what's it called, philo, meaning that businesses Texas, right?
Right.
Pretty much. And I thought that they had said, at least county council told us that we might be getting 20%. Is that right, Mr. Robinson, or did they mention that in a meeting?
I don't recall a percentage or an amount. You know, I know in past discussions, Green was here, I think the Steve had some discussion. So possibly we could get something, a couple of years, a few years back, probably 3 to 4 years.
Up to now, we're not getting any, besides what we get from DC Summit, I guess. What we call that, the type of tax.
That's just your regular property tax. We get the money. You're correct. We haven't received it.
You're welcome. Any other questions? If you do have any questions, at the top of that summary page, my phone number's on there. You're more than welcome to reach out. I'll do my best to answer any question I can. If I can't, I will get you an answer, or I'll get Mr. Robinson to get you an answer. But we appreciate being able to do the work again. We appreciate the work that Mr. Robinson and his team have done working with us with the hurricane. And we were out of power for almost 2 weeks. And so his flexibility was really helpful to us. So we're very appreciative of that.
We thank you.
We appreciate it.
Partner, and making sure everything's right.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're motion for our board minutes, November the 19th, 2024. Yes, ma'am.
A second.
Motion made by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. David, accept the superintendent from day two. Accept the minutes of November the 19th, 2024. All in favor, show by raising of the right hand. 8, 6, 0. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight for my superintendent's report, I first want to start off by celebrating and congratulating our academic challenge team at Fairfield Central High School. They had their season opener last night and won their opening game. So we're very proud of those scholars for the work that they did. Also, our football team made it to the state semifinals, and so we were happy but cold watching them play in that game. They did their best, and so they had a great season, and so for their effort at night, we also salute them as well. We have winter break starting on Friday. Our teachers will return Monday, January 6th, and then students returning that Tuesday, January 7th. I also want to give a shout out and thank Dr. Campbell, who just earned the district a $780,000 grant for safety. So very, very good work there. And just in that, the context of our season of Thanksgiving, our season of thankfulness and celebration, I just want to take this opportunity to thank my cabinet here for the tremendous job that they're doing supporting me in my first year as a superintendent. I couldn't have asked for a better team, so I'm very excited about continuing that work with them in the new year. I have 2 of my principals here, but the principal group has also been extraordinary with the work that they're doing at the schools, and so we're also very thankful to them. And then I just want to publicly acknowledge our school board as well and say thank you for taking a chance on me and bringing me to Fairfield County. This has been a remarkable first semester, and so I'm thankful for all the support that you've given and look forward to our continued success in the new year.
Thank you.
And two more things. We have just 2 more things. We have two students who will be competing this weekend, Tardarian Greer in the Shrine Bowl and Antario James in the North-South football game. So we are definitely proud of them as well.
Awesome. That's it?
That's it.
You sure?
You gonna do super?
Short and sweet.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but we can wait next week.
Okay, perfect.
At this time, we'll have Finance, Mr. Robinson.
Good evening again. Under finance, we only have one item this evening. That is the November 2024 finance report. And things look on track again. The revenues, the tax revenues for the month look pretty good for this time of year. All the expenditures are still in line, so we're just waiting for, I guess, the big tax collections in January, but everything looks good.
Everything looks good, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Robinson? We on board. We know you're a very conservative man. Very conservative.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anybody got any questions, Mr. Robinson? Thank you. Dr. Campbell, Operations Student Services.
Good evening, Chair Miller, other board members, Dr. Hemingway. It's the board meeting, so that means I'm back with a new set of policies. But first, we're going to start with the policies that were presented for first read last month and ask for your approval for second and final read of those policies. Before I review the recommendation, any questions about any of those policies? What has been presented and what will continue to be presented over the next few months are our J policies, and those J policies have everything to do with students. So you've had a review, and we've recommended changes to our code of conduct, expulsion, cell phone. So these policies relate to student attendance in class, monitoring attendance, how we account for attendance.
So, Dr. Campbell.
Yes, sir.
Will you please, because everybody don't know what's going on, especially the ones in say, TV land. So kind of bring them along with what you're, letting them know what you're doing.
Okay. So as a whole, we have some policies that have been 15, some 20 years that have not been updated. And we know that things are continuously changing in the educational field, particularly with some of the new student rights and responsibilities. So we are updating the policy so we are up to date and making sure that we are adhering to not only local policies, but also some national changes that have happened with some national laws as it relates to Title IX and those kind of student policies. And I would say every policy that we present to you as a board, we also send them to all of our principals the morning after and ask them to review them and provide feedback, and we're appreciative to those that have done that and helped us with these policies. We are working with our district attorneys, and we are also consulting the South Carolina School Boards Association on their model policies. And immediately after you approve policies for second read, we send those to the School Board Association, and they update those policies on our district website. And an easy way to find any of the new updated policies, when you log on to our website and you click on School Board policies, if you go all the way to the bottom of that list, there's something, the wording may be revisions or new policies. Every new policy is linked to the bottom, so you can quickly find those. But if there's anyone out there that is listening that has any questions, you just email me or call Student Services, and we'll be happy to walk you through.
So that does go to the school board association, state school board lawyers, as well as, if it's necessary, go to our own district attorney.
Absolutely. Or vice versa. But it ends up at School Board Association, who reviews them and posts them on the website. So for your first set of policies, you have two recommendations. The first one is the superintendent recommends the board approves the second and final reading of the following policies: JE, student attendance, and JH and JHR, student absences and excuses.
Okay. Is that all of them?
You have a total of 4 motions tonight.
Okay. But then that's this particular one, revision and rescinding, it's is that the one we on?
For the second and final read, you have a motion to approve the changes to 2 policies, and then you have a second motion to rescind a few policies.
Okay, all right. Let's make, can you make a motion, please?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion, we accept the superintendent recommendation, the board approve the second and final reading of the following policies: student attendance and JHR, student absence and excuses.
Second such motion.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Dr. Harris, to policy revision rescinding second and final reading of JE dash student attendance and JH and JH dash R student absent and excuses. That's what you want, right,
No, sir.
ma'am?
No, sir. So the first one, the motion that Ms. Harris Miller made was to approve JE and JHR.
Is that revision? I thought she read that. This one right here? I thought it was this one. That's the whole thing. This one you read? Right, motion one. What's the second? It's the whole thing. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Superintendent recommends the board approve the second and final reading of the following policy: JE dash student attendance and JH and JH dash R students absences and excuses. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. All right. That passed, all right. Can we get a motion for the second motion?
So the second is the superintendent recommends the board approve the second and final reading and rescinding of the following policies: JER, student attendance; JG, assignment of students to class; JHBB and JHBBR, attendance monitoring, accounting; and JHBA, attendance officer.
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion, we accept the superintendent recommendation, the board approve the second and final reading, the rescinding and the following policy: JER, student attendance; JG, assignment of students to class; JHBB and JHBBR, attendance monitoring, accounting; and JHBA, attendance officer.
Second such motion.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Dr. Harris. Accept the superintendent. Board approve the second and final reading and rescinding the following policy: JE dash R, student attendance administration rule; JG dash assignment of students to class; JHBB and JHBB dash R, attendance monitoring and accounting of JHBA and attendance officer. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was your second reading. So now we have another set to present for first reading and approval. And those are the superintendent recommends the board approves for first reading policy revisions for the following policies: JA, student policy goals, priority objective; policy JAA, equal education opportunities; and policy JIJRR, student rights and responsibilities.
Can we get a motion? Yes.
I make a motion, we accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the first reading policy revisions for the following policies: policy JA, student policy goals, priority objective; policy JAA, equal educational opportunities; and policy JI and JR, student rights and responsibilities.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Mr. Davis. Accept the superintendent recommendation, revision and rescinding policy JA dash students, policy goals dash priority objectives, policy JAA dash equal educational opportunities, and policy, I think that's JI and JIR, student rights and responsibility. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last motion for tonight is the superintendent recommends the board approve for first reading the rescinding of policy JB, equal education opportunities.
Can we get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we accept the superintendent recommendation of the board approve the first reading for the rescinding of policy JB, equal educational opportunity.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Mr. Davis. Policy revision, rescinding policy J8, student policy goals and priority objectives, policy JAA, and equal educational opportunities. I think that's policy JI and JI-R, student rights and responsibility, and rescinding a bunch of mumbo right there. All in favor, show by the raising of the right hand. Ma'am? First reading, right here. Right, okay. Motion two, the superintendent recommends the board approve the first reading of rescinding the policy JB dash equal educational opportunity. Is that right, Ms. Brown? Yes, sir. All right. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. This stuff get mixed up.
Thank you so much.
Got any more?
That's it for tonight. Thank you. Happy
Dr.
holidays.
Campbell. Thank you so much. All right. At this time, we have Human Resource Administration.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Under HR this evening, we have the following items for your approval. Item 1, certified resignations and terminations. Recommended action. The superintendent recommends that the board approve certified resignations and terminations as outlined in Exhibit 1A and Exhibit 1B to be effective at the conclusion of the 24-25 academic year.
Can we get a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion, we accept the superintendent recommendation to approve the certified resignation terminations as outlined in Exhibit 1A, 1B to be effective at the conclusion of the 2024-25 academic year.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Mr. Davis. Superintendent recommends the board approve the certified resignation and termination as outlined in Exhibit 1A and 1B to be effective at the conclusion of the 24-25 academic school year. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. Thank you.
Next, we have item 2, certified recommendations, recommended action. The superintendent recommends that the board approve professional certified educators for the 24-25 academic year as presented in 2A and 2B.
We get a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mm-hmm.
make a motion, we accept the superintendent recommendation that the board approve professional certified educators for the 24-25 academic year as presented in Exhibit 2A.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Mr. Davis. Superintendent recommends the board approve the professional certified educator for the 24-25 academic school year as presented by Exhibit 2A and 2B. All in favor show by the raising of the right hand. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just at this time, just want to, we have the board chair report. Just want to congratulate Mrs. Sylvia Harris on being named Regional Director for the South Carolina School Board Association, Region 12, Cherokee, Chester, Fairfield, Lawrence, and Newberry, and Union. And I just wanted to congratulate her. Let's give her. lastly, I wanted to congratulate Miss Renee Green, she's not here tonight, on being named the Vice President of the South Carolina Black Caucus. Let's give her. Okay, and you heard the superintendent talk about the Shrine Bowl this week, and our young men, we got one going to that's the Shrine Bowl in the south, what they call it? North-South football game. So we're very proud of them, very proud of all of our children. The ones that came up tonight did a great job, academics. So we do appreciate them, and y'all, it's nothing wrong with encouraging them. You see them, pat them on the back. Our staff, all the one that's doing the hard work. So we really appreciate it. Anybody got anything else? What's the board report? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank the board again for nominating me to run for this office. It was truly an experience. I didn't know I had to prepare all this stuff, so I was planning my speech. They only gave us 3 minutes, but I remember several years back, Mr. Miller probably remember, we had a conversation about the seat. Actually, Mr. Joseph Gatson was the past president 30 years ago. And I told Mr. Miller, I said, president seat too bad. And we had been talking, Mr. Miller said, well, you find out when you're running, when the election is. We never could really figure out, when we knew about it, it was already passed. But during the time that I've been on the board, I made a lot of connections with a lot of people in a lot of counties. So then they started calling me and saying, well, look, the seat is coming open. So I shared that with Mr. Miller, and I guess I waited my time, and my time has come. And, not knowing a lot of people, we do have a lot of people that just got elected to the board, and they didn't know me or the other lady. But one gentleman walked up to me and he said, you want me to tell you why I voted for you? I said, yes, please. He said, because when you read your speech, I felt the passion. That was the difference between you and her. And I said, the passion has always been there with me, even before Ms. Robinson contested that. Before I even got on the board, the passion has always been there for me. And sometimes you just have to let people see your light, just, I believe, silent sometimes doing the work. And I did the work, and I really, truly appreciate it. And I'm already on the ground running with the seat. So I already had a Zoom meeting, and I got to go to a retreat in January. So I do appreciate all of you for supporting me. And also, we have our 6th year of Feeding Fairfield coming up this Saturday. Thanks to Mr. Dixon always letting us do our drive through there, and it's from 11 to 2. Everybody can come out and get your free meal, just drive up, get the meal. And also my gala is coming up February 15th. I had to move it up because of the conference that's held in February. They moved their conference down. Apparently this is their 75th anniversary, so it's supposed to be something big at the conference this year. So I'm looking forward to that. So I got a lot on my plate, but I'm expecting a good turnout for my gala. If not, I know I'm getting a lot of donations because I'm already getting them in, so I do appreciate all of that. And I want to wish all of you that's listening out there, I know you're getting out Friday. I hope y'all have a safe and wonderful winter break and happy holidays to everybody. I look forward to seeing y'all in the new year.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything?
Chairman Miller,
Yes,
first of all, I'd like to acknowledge my son, my middle son, which graduated from Coastal Carolina this past weekend with a degree in graphic design. So I'm very proud of him. He accomplished his mission. It's only up for him now, so to go higher. I also like to thank Mr. Dixon. This past weekend, we held our community tis the season to be jolly community free food giveaway. I'd like to thank everybody that was a part of it. that helped out, the sheriff corner, my church, my mother for stepping in, helping out. Primetime Ride Love Never Fails. I also would really like to thank Soda City Live. We had an opportunity to go on there, talk about the event. They helped promote it. We was able to serve like 260 people total through the support of the community and a little bit of their promotion. And I just want to thank everybody again. I hope everybody have a happy New Year and a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, that saying, I would like to wish everybody happy holidays. I know that we're going to be out closing down on Friday. And I think we do a half a day Friday.
Kids.
This district golf will do a whole day.
Yes.
I would ask you. Now, when you leave, they're gonna be running here like flies. But anyway, we do wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and be safe. Everyone listening to me out there, you know, it's really dangerous. You know, whether you're on the highway or whether you just, you know, it's crazy out there.
Yes,
Be careful.
yes, yes.
God bless you. And can we get a motion to adjourn?
Power off.
My second.
Motion made to adjourn by Ms. Harrison Williams, second by Mr. Davis. All in favor, show by the raising of the right hand. Meeting adjourned. All right.
Off. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all the board members.
No, I see you Friday night.
Oh, that's right, that's right, that's right.
See you Friday.
Mr. Miller, what time you gotta be at church?
I'm looking at it, I just noticed